do solar panels actually do anything in the winter? How much has my solar production actually dropped by? And do they still work during the everlasting grey skies, the lashings of rain and the flurries of snow that we get here in the UK? The short answer is no, not really. But the long answer is yes. Yes, they do. Now, I expect that you're now sufficiently confused that you're about to close this video and move on to some overly enthusiastic Americans video, but I'm afraid the truth is certainly a little bit more nuanced than black or white. So, if you want the truth, you're in the right place. Now, it's coming up to a year since we had solar panels and the Tesla Powerwall 3 installed on the garage to feed the house. And if you don't remember that debacle where they let me get involved with the installation process, let me jog your memory.
Oh God!
Well, now we are in the height of winter, so I thought it would be a very good time to discuss what solar panel ownership has been like in the winter and what to expect and how to make the most of them so that your energy bills don't end up being stupid again. But I guess a very important disclaimer before I go any further. My solar panels don't control the weather. I don't control the weather, and as solar panels are depending on the sun, and given that it's rained almost every single day since November, my electricity generation has been, for better words, completely So the stats that I'm about to show you won't be indicative of every winter. Some will be better than others. But this time around the sun, for the entire month of January, I generated, wait for it, 85 kilowatts, with the highest generation of electricity being on the 28th of January at 8.1 kilowatts, which for a day isn't terrible, but for an entire month is atrocious. Compare that to July, where we achieved nearly 500 kilowatts in June, and you can see a huge difference in how they performed in the winter versus the summer. The thing is, February is looking even worse, having generated only 15 kilowatts so far, and we're already a third of the way through the month. At this rate, it'll barely cross 50 kilowatts. To put that into perspective, 85 kilowatts equates to roughly £23 worth of electricity generation at the current price in February 2026, working out at 27 pence per kilowatt to import it from our electricity supplier. But to add further perspective, we're regularly hitting nearly 100 kilowatts of usage every single day. In fact, the highest usage over this winter period so far has been 119 kilowatts in a single day. So now, to some of you, that might seem astronomical. I mean, last year alone, we used 9.7 megawatts of energy, which is so massive, so astronomical, that you might consider reporting me to the authorities for the potential that I'm growing a huge jungle in the attic with that kind of use. But before you get on the phone to the Rozzers, I want to assure you that the only thing in my attic are the dead bodies and a few house mice. But the reason why our electricity bill is so high is that we don't have any other type of fuel except 2 wood burners at either end of the house for heating, and the rest is electric. Everything I have is electric. So that's 5 additional electric radiators, 2 immersion heaters for hot water. Our car is electric, and we use that on average for 50 miles a day. We've got 5 electric hobs, an electric grill, 2 electric ovens, 2 freezers, a dishwasher, a washing machine, a dryer, so on and so on. And it's all going all of the time because there's always someone at home. And this doesn't include the numerous amount of computers and TVs and tech and networking and NAS drives, all manner of vampire devices constantly draining my home's grid. Saying it out aloud, it does make it seem rather excessive, I must admit, but the reality is it's going to be impossible for my very modest 10-panel system to keep up with that kind of use, especially when the panels are oriented on a nearly southeast facing roof, which isn't the ideal orientation for them. Another point is that the system that was installed, though, is pretty much state of the art, with some of the most efficient efficient panels in the industry. And to remind you what those are, the panels we have installed are the 450 watt REA Fusion 2 panels, which were fitted by the UK-based company Heatable, who, might I add, were incredible. But these panels are designed to be up to 30% more efficient than standard panels through being bifacial. So that means that they can generate energy from the main face, from the sun, whilst also generating energy from the underside, from the residual environmental light that hits them from the underside. It's not much, but it makes a massive difference. But not only this, is that they have their own integrated microinverters, which means they all work independently. If one gets obstructed or one gets damaged, then the other panels will continue to work at optimum generation, a feature which many systems aren't capable of because they all share one power plant. But even with some of the most powerful and efficient panels in the industry, it just hasn't been able to make a significant dent. I mean, it's made a dent, the equivalent of someone opening their car door, perhaps into your car door, and leaving the tiniest scratch that will buff out with a wet finger. But after all, £23 is £23. And if we look at the total, starting November the 1st and running right the way through to February the 10th, the panels still have generated 302 kilowatts in electricity, which is about £82. But let's face it, it's not a great amount. The thing is, I fully expected it to be pretty bleak. Heatable pretty much predicted it would be when they gave me a site report before we put the panels on. And in this report, it showed the production estimates as a daily average. Now, that chart showed that November, having an average of 4.5 kilowatts per day, December had 3, January had 3.4, and February had 6.1 kilowatts per day, and they were pretty much bloody close with those estimates, within half a kilowatt, with the exception of February. But then we're not quite there with February yet, so there's still time to bring that daily average up. And as we get closer to the sort of spring, we do get more sun. But going back to my point, it's not like I wasn't expecting it. Still, generation this low will likely throw first-time users of solar panels. Like me, you could have installed them before the summer, and then you'll only have this amazing upward trend of energy generation, saving you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds a month. But then, when it starts to decline rapidly after October, that's when the doubt starts to creep in. And the voice in the back of your head starts to whisper horrible little insecurities. Was it worth it? Would setting fire to my money have been a better way to keep warm? How can they ever possibly make their money back? Well, you can shoo away those little inner demons, because the next episode that I'm going to make about solar panels, I'll talk more about the summer generation, which was wildly beyond my expectations, and that alone makes panels worthwhile. But stay tuned for that one, because this leads on to the big meaty questions now of the subject of do solar panels work in the winter, and perhaps the most meatiest question of them all is, what can you do about it? Is there any possible way that you can make solar panels work better for you in the winter? Well, you might be surprised to know there are actually, in fact, some things you can do to help, both for those of you that don't have panels and are looking to get a system, and there's some things that you can do if you already have panels and want to maximise the benefits. And that's things beyond just the regular maintenance, such as making sure the panels are clean and free from leaves, or that the snow is kind of brushed off them. That sort of stuff is common sense. But if you've yet to get panels installed, the most important thing that you need to think of is the orientation. The best orientation for year-round usage, as I'm sure your solar panel provider like Heatable will tell you, especially in the winter, is due south. Having them just a smidgen out, facing either southeast or southwest, can reduce output by up to 15%, which is absolutely mental. Obviously, your roof orientation is probably going to affect which way you install it, but if you can have it in your garden or grounds, that could be another option. But another thing that you could do, if you can't change the orientation, is make sure that they're at least at the correct tilt angle for the season. During the summer, the best tilt angle is between 20 and 30 degrees, while in the winter, the tilt angle, I think, is 50 to 60 degrees, because the sun is much lower. And it helps the snow slide off as well if you live in a region where it snows often, such as the north of the UK. Now, if you already have panels installed, you're probably going to be much more limited with what you can do regarding the movement or placement. But one thing that you could do is take note of the panel's surroundings. During the winter, the sun, as I just mentioned, is much lower in the sky, has a lower path running through. So any trees nearby will affect it in a much greater way than in the summer because it's much lower. So check your tree lines. Take out anything that's unnecessary. But if all the above tips aren't something that you can control, and perhaps you've yet to install the panel, the obvious plan is to get the most efficient panels that you can, such as the ones that we have from Hateable, because it will be a key factor in maximising energy generation, to pick up the slack of not having them in the optimum orientation if they've been placed slightly incorrectly. Perhaps another tip here, and the one that I wish I'd done myself, is to have oversized the system at the time of getting it installed. When using the calculator on the Hateable website, it lets you trace the roof of your house to see how many panels you can fit on, along with giving you rough estimates of the cost. The maximum I could fit on here was 10 panels, but I wish I'd been able to put more. Perhaps I could have put on some on the house to pair it up with. Not necessarily to aid winter generation, which it would have done, obviously, but my aim of oversizing would have been to try and offset the winters with the summer's generation. Because one thing I haven't really factored into any of this episode so far is the ability to export. Now, I use so much electricity that for the most part, we don't end up exporting very much. But if you're a normal person and don't have a farm in the attic, then it's very likely you'll be able to export your energy, which you over-generate, which means that you'll get paid for every kilowatt that is over and beyond your load and usage. For me, this is paid at 15 pence per kilowatt. So the bigger your panel system, the more energy you can generate in the summer and the more you can export. So this means if you end up exporting £300 worth of electricity over the summer and your bills are zero, but then you use £300 of electricity in the winter, you'll end up with a net zero cost overall. So it's imperative to look at the biggest panel set that you can to help offset the winter bills with the summer. And talking about the bills, this brings on to perhaps the most important two tips, and it's got nothing really to do with the panels themselves. Instead, you've got to look at both some form of energy storage and some kind of smart home tariff or smart tariff to work in unison with the panel system. Only then will you see a massive benefit in the winter. Going back to our energy bill, the majority of our utterly obscene usage happens actually overnight, between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And this is where we heat the house, heat the water, charge both the car and the power wall. The solar panels just wouldn't be able to meet this load, given that the max theoretical output of my system is around 4 kilowatts an hour, and the car alone charges at 7 kilowatts an hour. So offloading the usage that has the highest drain to an overnight tariff where the price of the energy is much lower is imperative in propping up that lower solar generation over the winter. For me, I've gone with an Octopus Smart Tariff, which gives you 7 pence per kilowatt of energy overnight, which is nearly a quarter of the price of daytime use. So it ends up making a massive difference. And it means then that when electricity is at its most expensive, the solar panels can make a bigger dent to the overall bill, as they'll be taking some of the strain that's at that peak daytime pricing. But another reality check here, there's only so much they can do when the sun goes into hiding for 3 months of the year. For me, there's just no chance in a month of Sundays that my solar panels will keep up with my daily usage, which is why battery storage is integral to a complete system. Now, when we got them installed, we asked Hateable to put in a Powerwall 3 at the same time, and it just might be the secret sauce to making the solar panels have more of an impact during the winter and the summer, but in the winter especially. And it's not necessarily to store the generated electricity, which it will do, but let's face it, you'll likely consume as much as you use without any excess going to the battery or grid. But by adding storage, it means that I can charge the battery up at 7 pence per kilowatt overnight, and then I can slowly drain it throughout the day. I say slowly, but most days it's good as empty come lunchtime at the rate we use electricity. But because I have, say, 10 kilowatts of energy at the cheaper 7 pence per price to use in the day, it ends up leaving a very small window of time left for the solar panels to actually cover. And obviously any extra energy during the day is going back into the battery. Most days I find that the combination of battery storage and solar panels will sustain the house until the sun goes down, making a difference to my bills where it matters the most. You can see from the graphs that our import from the grid generally begins around sunset, which in the UK at this time of year is the ungodly hour of 4:30 p.m. But without this battery to sustain the load in the morning during the winter, my bill would easily be double or triple or potentially even more. So don't be silly and get a battery. Probably the best thing that you could do in the winter alongside your panels. But that's it. That's my final tips so far from my own usage and my own experience. That hopefully it'll help you get the most out of yours in the winter. So to bring some kind of conclusion to this episode, it's very clear that if you have solar panels or you're thinking about getting solar panels, temper your expectations on its winter capabilities and investigate ways to prop it up through a large enough system to offset using summer, the use of smart tariffs to shift the load, and include battery storage as a part of your entire system. For me, combined together, the largest bill that I've had so far to run absolutely everything I mentioned at the start has come to just £380 for the entire month, which for the amount of usage that we have is actually incredible. And it would be nowhere near as low as this if I didn't use that holy trinity of methods. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, because in the coming months I'll be doing a few more episodes on my solar panel system. One will be a full year catch up and seeing whether or not it's met my expectations. And I'll also be taking a look at the Powerwall 3 in more detail and discussing with you why I might have made a mistake on that one. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, I'd love to know your tips on making the most of your panels and solar system in the winter. Have I missed anything? What do your bills currently look like? Are mine higher or lower than yours? Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure everyone watching and myself will be more than happy for any additional tips that I might have missed. But if you want to check out the team at Heatable who installed the system, I'll also drop their links in the description below as well. And I'll link to the video where we installed the panels, which is a bit of fun, and it shows my journey learning a bit more about panels and understanding how well they'll work for me. Or if you're watching on TV, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you straight to Heatable as well. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's slightly different episode. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.